Historians call the phenomenon of African Americans moving away from the South between the two world wars the Great Migration. The oppressive sharecropping system, violence, disenfranchisement, increasing mechanization, and less need for black farm labor pushed African Americans out of the South. At the same time, the prospects of greater freedom, more money, and a chance for families pulled them north, where they gained a slender foothold in the industrial working class economy. Between 1900 and 1930, over 1.5 million black people left the South. In the 1920s alone, 872,000 migrated to the North and West. With this migration, African Americans became predominantly urban people, whether located in the North or the South. 3 cities alone, New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia, held a quarter of the black people in the North in 1920. African Americans from the rural South often moved to the southern cities first, before heading north. In Detroit, Chicago, and other northern industrial towns, many blacks, especially men, got decent paying jobs in the auto plants, steel mills, and other manufacturing industries. Thanks to union contracts, some of these jobs came with the health benefits, retirement plans, and job security that had been very rare for Southern jobs held by blacks. Some African Americans reached middle class standards of living thanks to these jobs. In the new northern communities, self-reliance among blacks became not just a virtue, but also a necessity. Due to residential segregation, the black middle and working classes lived in the same communities as poor African Americans. Separation from these whites and the need for self-reliance led to what is sometimes called the golden years of black capitalism between 1919 and 1929. There were over 70,000 black-owned firms during this period. They were largely service businesses, barbers and beauty parlors, laundries, restaurants, grocery stores, newspapers, automotive shops, funeral parlors, insurance companies, and banks. Between 1900 and 1914, the number of black-owned banks grew from 4 to 51, and black retail merchants went from 10,000 to 25,000. Between 1919 and 1929, more than 700,000 black firms provided for black consumers. The black middle class, which included doctors, lawyers, and teachers, grew. Well-off African Americans vacationed at black resorts on Martha's Vineyard, Sag Harbor, among other places. Other black institutions besides for-profit businesses such as colleges, churches, hospitals, social clubs were built or grew during these years. The period's 70,000 black-owned firms were vulnerable to economic and social upheaval. Both black businesses and black consumers were largely and legally frozen out of the white market. Together with the relatively small numbers of blacks in the North and the difficulty of getting financing unless it was from a black-owned bank, economic segregation helped keep black firms small. In 1928, the National Business League survey of 1,534 black businesses found that nearly half recorded an annual gross of less than $5,000. Only 9% grossed more than $25,000 per year. And black prosperity, no matter how small or separate, still sometimes attracted violence of white envy and competition. Racism and the competition of white businesses defined the social structure in which black entrepreneurs had to function. That social structure limited the amount of wealth that could accumulate. The black businesses of the period strengthened black communities, but they did not uplift most African Americans. World War I opened a bit of economic space for black male workers. But as white male workers returned to reclaim those jobs, racial tensions increased. The growing black populations in cities like Detroit, St. Louis, and Chicago flamed the racial hatred of whites in these cities. The summer of 1919 was called the Bloody Summer because of the many violent assaults by white mobs on black communities, which continued through 1925, hitting Chicago, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Tulsa, and St. Louis, among others. In 1923, white vigilantes lynched more than 20 black residents of Rosewood, Florida, and mobs burned down the entire black neighborhood, including homes, businesses, churches, meeting halls, and schools. These brutal actions removed billions of dollars in today's currency from these communities. The governor's office, the courts and legislatures, the county and local sheriffs, white newspapers, and middle-class professionals often looked the other way. Some employers invited black workers to come north as a way to break unions. Walter White, writing about the notorious Tulsa riot just after it occurred, said, "What are the causes of the race riot that occurred in such a place? First, the Negro in Oklahoma has shared in the sudden prosperity that has come to many of his white brothers. And there are some colored men who have become wealthy. This fact has caused a bitter resentment on the part of the lower order of whites, who feel that these colored men, members of an inferior race, are exceedingly presumptuous in achieving greater economic prosperity than they who are members of a divinely ordered superior race." The Great Depression hit black businesses especially hard. Many of the small businesses of the golden years failed, and only 12 black-owned banks remained by 1934. This, plus discrimination at white-owned banks, contributed to the undercapitalization of many more black-owned businesses.